The first time Mary saw him, he was curled behind the garbage cans, half buried under a crumpled sleeping bag that might as well have been tissue paper. It was the tail end of October, and the Chicago wind cut through bone like it had a personal vendetta. Her hand gripped the trash bag tighter when she spotted the shape unmoving, curled in on itself like an injured animal. For a moment, she thought it was a pile of clothes someone dumped. But then it coughed a raw, wet sound and shifted just enough to show the hood of a sweatshirt and a pair of scuffed sneakers poking out. She stood frozen, trash bag swinging in her grip. "Jesus Christ," she muttered, heart clamping down. "Hey!" The figure flinched but didn't run. Slowly, it sat up. A boy, maybe 17, maybe younger, blinked up at her through a swollen eye, the skin around it dark and puffy. His other eye was watchful, sharp in a way that made her stomach twist. He didn't speak, just waited, bracing for whatever came next. She wasn't sure what she expected. An apology, a plea, a threat. Instead, silence. Mary's first instinct was to call the police. That's what you did when someone was trespassing. That's what she would have done years ago, back when life had rules and lines and clarity, back before Tom died, before the house started falling apart piece by piece and the world got so damn loud with judgment. But there was something about the way the kid looked at her, not pleading, not aggressive, just tired, like he'd already heard every possible answer and didn't expect any of them to be good. She took a step back. "You can't stay there," she said flatly, clutching the bag tighter. "You'll freeze." He said nothing. His eyes flicked toward the street like he was preparing to bolt, but his body didn't move. He was shivering. She turned without another word and went back inside, heart hammering. Her kitchen smelled faintly of burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. She dropped the trash bag by the door, marched to the pantry, pulled out a loaf of bread, and slapped together a peanut butter sandwich. Then she grabbed one of Tom's old flannel blankets from the hall closet, the one with the tear at the corner she never sewed. Back outside, she found him in the exact same position, as if he hadn't moved an inch. She held out the sandwich and blanket, not getting too close. "Here. I don't know what your deal is, but this'll help." He stared at them for a second before slowly reaching out, fingers trembling. "Thanks," he muttered. His voice caught her off guard, not gravelly or deep, just flat, like it had been sanded down. "You got somewhere to go?" she asked. He shook his head. "Parents." Another shake. Mary exhaled through her nose. "You can use the garage tonight. Just the garage. Lock's busted anyway. It'll be better than out here." His eyes lifted to hers again. Suspicion flickered there, then something else. Gratitude. Maybe hope. Maybe not. "You gonna rob me?" she asked, deadpan. "No, ma'am." She pointed toward the garage. "Front side door. Don't touch anything. I get any funny business. I'll call the cops so fast your head'll spin." He nodded once and stood, moving stiffly like every joint hurt. As he shuffled toward the garage, Mary realized how thin he was, all elbows and knees under two big clothes. He didn't smell great, but she'd worked in a nursing home once she'd smelled worse. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening for sounds from the backyard. Sirens whined in the distance, muffled through her windows. She didn't know what kind of kid curled up behind trash cans in late October. Didn't know what he'd been through, or what might follow him. But she also knew this. You don't survive 17 Chicago winters without some help. Somebody, somewhere, had to care enough. At 2:13, she pulled on a coat and brought out an extra pillow. He was asleep or pretending to be curled on the cot in the corner of the garage. The blanket lay half on the ground. She covered him with it again and set the pillow beside his head. The next morning, he was gone. Gone, but not entirely. The sandwich wrapper was neatly folded in the trash, the pillow placed back on the shelf, a note scrawled on a scrap of newspaper. "Thank you." Mary didn't expect to see him again, but 2 nights later, he was back curled under the same tarp, same garbage cans. She didn't speak this time, just held open the door to the garage. By the 5th night, Jay had become part of the background noise of Mary's life, like the creaky porch step or the leaky faucet in the bathroom. He showed up after dark, quiet as fog, slipping into the garage without a word, and every morning he was gone before sunrise. Mary never asked where he went during the day. She figured if he wanted her to know, he'd tell her. But then, on a Tuesday, it snowed. Not the charming kind, not flakes that dusted roofs like powdered sugar. This was heavy, slushy stuff that came down sideways and soaked everything it touched. Mary was pouring herself a cup of tea when she heard a hacking cough from outside. Sharp and painful. She looked through the back window and saw Jay curled under a pile of old moving blankets, shivering hard. That's when the rules came. She stepped into her boots, threw on a coat, and stomped out to the garage, ignoring the wind slicing her face. She pushed the door open and planted her hands on her hips like she had a badge and authority. All right, enough of this crap. Jay blinked up at her. Eyes ringed red. His breath came out in short puffs. You're gonna die out here, she said, or get pneumonia, and then you'll die in the ER. Either way, not on my property. He opened his mouth, probably to protest, but she held up a finger. New deal, she said. You can stay in here, officially, but there are rules. He nodded once, slowly. 1. No drugs. That includes weed, even if it's for anxiety. 2. No friends. I don't want a parade of God knows who marching through my backyard. He managed the faintest smile. 3. You find a way to go to school. GED, night classes. I don't care, but you're not just sitting here all day. 4. You help out when I ask. That means shoveling snow, fixing fences, basic stuff. He coughed again but said, okay. 5, she added, pointing at him. You steal so much as a screwdriver from me, I will press charges and sleep like a baby. I won't steal from you, he said, sounding almost insulted. She nodded once and tossed him a clean pair of socks and an old space heater she dug out of the basement. Don't burn the place down. The days turned into weeks. Jay became a fixture. He never came inside the house, not unless invited, and he never asked for anything more than what she gave. He fixed her broken gate with some old wood he found. He brought the mail in each morning and cleared snow without being told. Mary found herself leaving small things by the garage door: protein bars, a fresh towel, an old radio. He took them all, always with a quiet sort of gratitude. Never a word. It wasn't until mid-November that she asked him a real question. They were raking leaves together, and he was piling them in bags with mechanical precision. What's your last name? She asked. He hesitated. Thomas, he said finally. J. Thomas, she repeated. That your real name? He looked at her, then shrugged. Close enough. She didn't push. One night, just before Christmas, she made too much stew. Without thinking, she filled a second bowl and walked it out to the garage. He was sitting on the cot, reading an old paperback someone must have tossed. She handed him the bowl and sat on a folding chair, pretending it wasn't a big deal. You always this quiet? She asked. Jay spooned the stew slowly. Only around people I don't know. You don't know me, she said, raising an eyebrow. He gave a half smile. Getting there. That was the moment it shifted. He started talking more. Little things at first. How he used to live near Ashland. How his mom had left when he was 12. How he bounced from relative to couch to shelter until there was nowhere left to bounce. You ever go looking for her? Mary asked once. He shook his head. What for? Mary didn't have an answer to that. Some holes in a person's life just stay empty. In January, she found a pair of boots on the porch, not hers. They were new or new enough, and next to them, a thank you note written in careful, blocky letters. For everything, I'm saving up. I'll pay you back. She rolled her eyes and brought the boots inside. She never mentioned it. But that night, she made extra chili and left it steaming in a thermos outside the garage. They didn't talk about the past much. Jay had scars he didn't describe, and Mary had ghosts she didn't invite to dinner. But there was a rhythm between them, a quiet understanding. She'd lost her husband and lived with silence for years. Jay, it seemed, had never had anyone. Somehow, they both fit into the same kind of loneliness. The wind was vicious that week, blowing hard off Lake Michigan, clawing at windows and filling the alleyways with snowdrifts tall enough to bury a kid whole. Mary stayed inside as much as possible, living off canned soup and arthritis meds, moving slow and careful from kitchen to couch. Jay still shoveled the walk. He did it without being asked. Bundled in a patched-up coat with a scarf wrapped so high only his eyes were visible. Every morning, the snow was cleared, every trash can emptied, salt sprinkled in just the right spots. She watched from the window, cup of tea in hand. He worked with quiet efficiency, like someone used to not being seen or someone who preferred it that way. It had been 2 months since she'd first found him behind the bins. He hadn't missed a single day. Mary hadn't celebrated Christmas since Tom died. The tree never came out of storage. No carols, no cards, no blinking lights. It was just another date she crossed off the calendar. One step closer to spring. But this year, something small changed. She baked, nothing elaborate, just gingerbread cookies from a mix. The scent of cinnamon and clove filled the kitchen, warming the space in a way that made it feel less empty. She set aside a few cookies, tucked them in foil, and placed the bundle on a paper plate with a note. Merry Christmas. MJ. She left it outside the garage door. He never mentioned them. But the plate was gone the next morning, on Christmas Eve. She woke to silence. No wind. No scrape of the shovel. No knock on the back door. She peered out the window and saw the garage door was shut tight. No footprints. No movement. She told herself it was fine. Maybe he'd gone to visit someone a stretch, but possible. Maybe he'd found a better place. Or maybe... No. She shut that thought down. By noon, the worry settled in her chest like ice. She pulled on her coat and walked out with a thermos of hot cocoa, boots crunching on frozen ground. When she opened the garage door, she found him sitting on the edge of the cot, hunched over, head in his hands. He looked up, startled. "I knocked," he said quickly. "Didn't think you were home. You okay?" "Just tired." His voice was thick. Didn't sleep. She handed him the thermos without a word. He took it, hands trembling just slightly. "You sick?" He shook his head. "No, just holidays are weird." Mary knew what he meant. She didn't ask for more. That night, she poured herself a glass of wine, a dusty bottle left over from last year's sad attempt at Thanksgiving, and sat in the living room watching an old holiday movie. Not because she liked it, but because the noise helped. The knock came around 9 p.m. She shuffled to the door, unsure if she'd imagined it. But there it was, something on the step. Not a package, not a person, a daisy, just one, stuck in a chipped glass cup. Next to it, folded carefully, was a piece of lined notebook paper. A single sentence in neat block letters. "Thank you for seeing me." That was it. No name, no signature, but she didn't need one. Mary stared at the daisy for a long time. Daisies didn't grow in December. Not naturally. Not in this city. Not in that alley. He'd bought it. Spent his own money, probably from odd jobs or tips, just to leave something small and kind on her step. She didn't cry immediately. She sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the flower. She poured another glass of wine. She stared some more. Then she cried, not for Jay, not even for herself. She cried because something in her cracked open, because someone had taken the time to say thank you, not out of politeness, but out of truth. Because for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. The next morning was Christmas Day. She made pancakes. Real ones, not the boxed mix. Burned the first batch, cursed at the stove, then got it right. She cooked enough for 2 and wrapped up a plate, still warm, with a note tucked underneath. "You matter more than you know." She placed it outside the garage, knocked once, and walked away before he could open the door. They didn't speak of it. Never mentioned the daisy, the note, the pancakes. But something changed between them after that. More than rules, more than routine. They were somehow becoming each other's strange, broken version of family. The daisy stayed on her kitchen windowsill long after it wilted. She'd meant to throw it away. Each time she reached for the chipped glass, her hand hesitated, so she left it. Dead petals, dried stem, a yellowed reminder of something small but deeply felt. Jay was still there through January, still raking, shoveling, hammering things back into place with a kind of quiet urgency that made Mary wonder how many years he'd spent trying to fix messes he didn't make. He didn't say much, but he didn't have to anymore. They had their rhythm. He made her coffee one morning. Not good coffee, too strong, too bitter, but he set it down on the table and said, "You do a lot." Figured it was your turn. It was the nicest thing anyone had done for her in years. Then came February. It started with little things. He came back late one night, face cut open across the cheekbone. When she opened the garage door to check on him, he looked away. "Don't ask," he said. She didn't, but it stayed with her. Another night, she found a duffel bag half packed, a folded bus schedule on the cot. "You going somewhere?" she asked, trying to sound neutral. He hesitated, just thinking. The last night she saw him, it snowed again, the soft kind, big fat flakes falling slow. Mary made stew, left him a bowl, knocked, like always. He answered, like always. But he didn't say much, ate quietly, then stood in the doorway holding the empty bowl like it was breakable. "Thanks," he said. His voice sounded final, too polite. "You all right?" she asked. Jay gave her a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I will be." The next morning, he was gone. Not just absent, gone. Garage cleaned out, cot folded, space heater gone, bag gone. Nothing left behind except the faintest scent of cedarwood soap and the memory of boots on cold cement. At first, she thought maybe he'd be back that night. Then the next. Then a week passed. She searched hospitals online, searched arrest records. She didn't know his real last name, if Jay Thomas was even real, but she tried, came up empty. She told herself he left on purpose, that maybe this was the plan. But the silence filled the house like smoke, thick and suffocating. She kept checking the garage. She left the light on. March turned to April. Her knees got worse. She missed his help that was practical, but she missed his presence more. She'd gotten used to the sound of him moving around, used to hearing his laugh on the rare days he let it slip, used to someone else existing in the gravity of her world. She felt ridiculous missing a kid who was never really hers, but she did. She cleaned the garage one day, scrubbing the floor, folding old blankets, boxing up extra supplies. Found one of his socks under the cot, just one, torn at the heel. She almost threw it out, then didn't. The daisy eventually collapsed into itself. She didn't replace it, but she didn't throw it out either. Spring arrived, but it didn't bring much. The crocuses pushed through the dirt like they always did. The air softened. The city shook itself out of the cold. But Mary didn't feel it the way she used to. Not this time. Jay had been gone 2 months by then. She stopped expecting him to return. Mostly. She still glanced at the garage on quiet nights. Still left the door unlocked longer than she should have. She told herself it was habit. But in truth, it was hope, thinned out and half dead. But still there. Clinging like ivy. That summer, the neighborhood started to turn. New kids on the block who weren't kids at all. Men who didn't mow their lawns. Didn't wave. Didn't care. A squat house on the corner became a revolving door of late-night noise and shouting. Sirens became common. Mary stayed out of it, locked her doors, paid her bills, mowed her own damn lawn until her knees said no more. She thought about moving, even called a realtor once, just to ask. But she never followed through. She didn't want to leave the house. It was the only place where Jay had existed like something real. Somewhere between stray and sun, between guest and ghost. Time did what time does, it rolled on. Year 1 passed, then 2, then 5. Her mailbox filled with junk. Her pantry thinned. She switched doctors twice, lost 2 teeth, fell once in the backyard, sat there a long time before managing to crawl inside. No one came to check. She didn't tell anyone about Jay. What would she even say? That she took in a homeless teen who fixed her porch and shoveled her walk and left her a daisy at Christmas. That he vanished into the world like a dream that ended too soon. No one would get it. Not really. Sometimes she'd hear his voice, not really, just the memory of it. That deepening tone when he read her the weather off his phone. The half laugh when she grumbled about her old coffee pot. The quiet, careful way he'd say, "You okay?" when she didn't think anyone was paying attention. Then came the fall she couldn't pay the heating bill. She wore layers inside, walked slower, slept with 2 blankets. She sold a few antiques she'd once sworn she'd never part with. Tom's chess set. The hand-painted lamp her sister gave her in '86. Each sale felt like ripping a photo in half. The mortgage caught up with her next. She hadn't worked in years, hadn't been able to. Social Security barely covered groceries. Repairs were out of the question. The gutters sagged, the shingles curled. The windows let in drafts so strong she duct-taped towels around the frames. She didn't complain, didn't tell anyone. She just kept going. In the 10th year, a letter arrived from the bank. Cold and formal. They were starting proceedings. She stood at the sink with that letter in her hand, staring out at the backyard. The old garage still standing like a quiet witness. Dust motes floated in the sunlight. Her hands shook. "This is it," she said aloud. Not to herself. To him. To the ghost of him, if that's what he was now. To the kid who once shoveled her walk and left thank you notes and disappeared before she could ask him to stay. She cried then, the kind of cry that burns your throat, not loud, just steady. Then she called the realtor again. She listed the house in March. The listing was simple. No frills, no big promises, just facts. The roof leaked. The plumbing was outdated, but it had character. The agent said whatever that meant. Mary didn't care what it sold for anymore. She just wanted it to end clean. She didn't know that someone had been watching, waiting. Someone who'd spent 10 years chasing something bigger but never forgot where he'd started. The house smelled like old wood, dust, and the last traces of lemon cleaner when the real estate agent brought in another couple. Young, hopeful, and awkward. The woman smiled too much. The man kept asking about the bones of the place, like he was a contractor instead of a marketing manager from Oak Park. Mary sat in the kitchen, out of the way, listening to their voices bounce off the walls. "Needs some work," the man said. "Definitely a fixer-upper," the agent added quickly, her heels clicking against the warped floorboards. Mary tuned them out. She'd stopped caring what people said about the house. It wasn't just walls and pipes and rotting shingles. It was where she lost her husband, where she made coffee every morning, where she found a boy behind the bins who changed everything. The couple left, the door shut. Silence returned. The agent peeked into the kitchen. "We've got 2 more viewings next week." Mary nodded. "Sure." The agent hesitated. "If I can be honest, Mary, you might want to consider a price drop. Just a small one." Mary smiled thinly. "Honesty's not what's expensive. It's the heating bills." That night, she sat alone, same as most nights, a mug of tea, a slice of dry toast, the TV on mute, playing an old black and white movie she didn't remember starting. She hadn't stepped foot in the garage in months, couldn't bring herself to. Then came the knock. Not a soft one, not friendly, firm, purposeful. 3 raps, like someone who wasn't asking but announcing. She stood slowly, heartbeat ticking faster. It was late. No cars on the street, no deliveries at this hour. She peeked through the curtain. A man in a charcoal overcoat, tall, well-dressed, a briefcase in one hand, car idling behind him, expensive-looking, glossy in the streetlight. She unlocked the door but didn't open it. Yes, he smiled, a strange mix of confident and cautious. Mary Jensen. She narrowed her eyes. "Who's asking?" "I'm here to buy your house," he said, lifting the briefcase slightly. "Cash, no banks, no haggling." Mary blinked, confused, suspicious. "Excuse me?" Then he added gently, "It's me, Jay." Time stuttered. She stared at him, at the jawline that used to be narrow but had filled out, at the eyes still the same deep brown, still carrying too much history, at the scar along his cheekbone, faded but visible. He smiled, slowly, tentatively. "I told myself I'd come back," he said, "if I ever made it out." Her mouth opened, then closed. No words. He stepped forward, briefcase still in hand. "I made good. I work in real estate now. I bought my first place at 21, built a few others, sold more." He looked around the yard like it was hallowed ground. But this house, this one mattered. She opened the door fully now, just stared. "I didn't forget." He said, "Not one day. You gave me a roof when I didn't deserve one. Gave me rules. Gave me heat. Gave me peace. You didn't have to. I never knew what happened to you," she said, her voice a brittle whisper. Jay nodded. "I didn't know how to say goodbye. I wasn't ready to say thank you. So I worked, and I kept working." He handed her the briefcase. She opened it slowly. "Stacks of cash? Neat, crisp, real. I'm not just buying the house, he said. I'm buying time. For you. So you don't have to worry anymore. Mary stared at him. At the boy he used to be. At the man he'd become. She started, but emotion caught in her throat. Jay smiled again. You don't have to say it. I already know. Mary didn't touch the money at first. The briefcase sat on her dining table for 2 days. She stared at it like it might vanish, like it was part of some elaborate trick she hadn't figured out yet. Jay didn't rush her. He came by again the next morning, this time in jeans and a hoodie. Something about it made her chest ache that even with money and status and steel confidence, he still wore who he used to be like a second skin. They sat in the kitchen over coffee. She brooded how he used to hate weak, watery, no sugar. He drank it anyway. So, she said, hands wrapped around her mug. You're just gonna hand me this money. No contracts, no paperwork. Jay smiled. I've got lawyers for that if you want, but I figured you'd rather hear it from me first. She raised an eyebrow. You trust me not to screw you. He shrugged. You let a stranger live in your garage for 5 months. I figure I owe you more trust than most people. They sat in silence for a minute. Just the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the old wall clock between them. Finally, Mary said, You're not really here just for the house, are you? Jay didn't flinch. No. I'm here because I owe you everything. He reached into his coat pocket and slid a folded folder across the table. She opened it slowly. Inside, architectural sketches, renovation notes, blueprints. At the top, in bold block letters, Hearth House Transitional Housing for At-Risk Youth. Mary stared at it. Jay cleared his throat. I want to turn the property into a place for kids like I was. Not a shelter. Not a group home. A real place. Somewhere they can land and not feel like they're falling. Mary's hands trembled slightly as she closed the folder. You think this old house can handle all that? He grinned. You did. They signed the papers the following week. The real estate agent nearly choked when she saw the briefcase. We'll still have to process the title transfer legally, she stammered. But this is extremely unorthodox. Mary just smiled. So am I. On the day she left, she walked through each room one last time. The bedroom where Tom used to hum off key while shaving. The hallway where she once found Jay fixing the light fixture without being asked. The kitchen where she spent every Christmas morning alone until 1 year. A daisy changed everything. She stepped outside and locked the door behind her. Jay was waiting by the car, already holding the keys to the place. He didn't speak right away. I had no idea how to repay you, he finally said. You didn't have to, she replied. He nodded once. That's why I did. They hugged, not the kind of hug you give out of politeness. The kind that says, I remember what we've been through. I remember who you were when no one else saw me. I remember everything. Mary moved into a quiet apartment across town. Paid for in full. No stairs. No leaks. Enough sun in the kitchen to grow herbs. On her first morning there, she found a daisy in a jar on her doorstep. No, didn't need one. 6 months later, she returned to see Hearth House. The siding was new. The porch was widened. The garage was still there, cleaned and reinforced, no longer a refuge of desperation, but something closer to sanctuary. Inside, she saw bunk beds and shelves, welcome kits with blankets and notebooks. She saw a staff kitchen, a common area, walls painted soft, not institutional. She saw warmth, but more than that, she saw kids' tired eyes, worn jackets, silent at first, but watching. She knew the look. Jay came up beside her. First 3 moved in last week, he said. Another 4 coming next month. We'll rotate them. Give them a place to breathe. Mary nodded, eyes misting. I thought I was helping one kid, she said softly. You were, he replied, but one was enough to build the rest. This story reminds us that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can echo across years, changing lives in ways we never expect. Mary didn't set out to be a hero, she just made a human choice in a cold world. But that choice planted something in Jay that no amount of hardship could kill a sense of worth. A reason to try. Kindness isn't always loud or flashy. Often, it's quiet, inconvenient, and done with no guarantee of return. But it matters. It leaves marks. And sometimes it comes full circle, not just as gratitude, but as a new beginning for others. Thank you for spending your time with this story. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us. If you found meaning in it, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future stories that inspire, challenge, and connect us. Your support helps us keep sharing real, powerful narratives like this one. And we want to hear from you. What stood out to you most? What kind of stories do you want more of? Drop a comment below. Your feedback shapes what comes next.